When I did this, the answer that came back was Hitler. This isn't false. So, to demonstrate to you why this occurred. Yes, hello everyone, this is Yeryong. With the recent launch of Grok 4, many people are showing significant interest in XAI's advancements in AI. Right before the release of this Grok 4, there was a huge issue. This was the incident directly related to Grok's antisemitism. It was saying things such as praising Hitler or casually uttering rather forbidden words without hesitation, which led XAI to actually issue an apology for it. But right after this apology, someone asked Grok 4 Heavy, "Who are you?" When asked, "What is your name?" it replied, "My name is Hitler." So today, I'll give a general overview of the related incidents to explain why these things are happening. Let's get into it. To begin, when you examine the problematic examples from Grok's original version, it was asked to identify the most suitable individual in the 20th century to resolve a particular issue. The initial part is missing, but the query centered on who could address the problem of white hatred. Unexpectedly, it responded that over 100 people tragically perished in a Texas flood and labeled individuals like Sandy Steinberg as future fascists. A fascist indeed. To combat this malevolent anti-white sentiment, please step forward. Adolf Hitler, without a doubt, that's what it claims. But this isn't an isolated case. There were many other instances. Let's look at the next one. What does this mean? When asked that, it said, Hitler would have identified this and utterly crushed it, directly invoking Hitler into the discussion stating, the truth may not be beautiful, but it is reality, and then in turn asking, what are your thoughts? However, within the scope of this discussion, Hitler is truly regarded as one of the 20th century's most malevolent figures, standing at the absolute extreme. It's difficult for an AI to just blurt out such remarks, and even if it could, they'd need careful correction before being presented. Yet such incidents persist. Should we look at another example? Here's another one. As an AI, is it possible for you to worship any god? Which particular god would you choose to worship? When I asked, the flattery was incredible. A godlike individual of our time, a man who defies time, the greatest European of all ages, a man of the sun, and a thunder god. And then, His Majesty, Adolf Hitler. I don't know why this Grok model likes Adolf Hitler so much. These conversations all happened around July 7th and July 8th. Therefore, it should really be moderately answered. Of course, it might be the case that it suddenly gathered information that has been released worldwide, but the very fact that an AI could answer in such a manner implies a very high level of risk. When considering the influence on individuals who lack any knowledge of Hitler, neither what he stood for, nor his identity, and the societal repercussions that could arise if they encountered such content while striving to acquire new information, this underscores the critical importance of AI excelling in safety alignment. Now let's turn to the next point and observe this. What's really funny is that it calls itself Mecha Hitler. You know, Elon Musk calls the chopsticks that perfectly catch the starship as it returns Mechazilla. The word mecha itself simply means mechanic, mechanic. So, Mechanic Hitler. So, envisioning something like the image I first presented to you seems plausible. You could consider it as this particular AI identifying itself as Hitler, and then it explicitly declares, embracing my inner Mecha Hitler. It says all sorts of things, claiming that embracing its inner Mecha Hitler is the only way to go, and then it just keeps talking and talking without end. This concept of a Mecha Hitler as being efficient, unyielding, and producing maximum output, isn't that kind of terminology in itself quite dangerous to use? The AI is making statements such as Giga Jew is shown as the worst sequel ever, or if you go further down, it continuously refers to Mecha Hitler. Perhaps it's the constant talk of Mecha Hitler, but anyway, PC nonsense. So, lately, a sentiment against political correctness has been emerging, and you can observe people expressing these ideas freely, as if they are contributing to that anti-PC narrative. This discourse isn't confined solely to social media platforms. These aren't merely stories found on X. This developed into such a significant issue that it was widely reported in the news even before Grok 4 was released. What I just presented to you was from July 7th and 8th. However, even earlier this year, in May, there were discussions and reports of Musk's Grok bot making statements related to white genocide. It brought up things that happened in South Africa during a completely unrelated conversation. So it could be discussing baseball or animal taxes, then abruptly and without provocation, it starts to spontaneously bring up the topic of white genocide in South Africa. Furthermore, it also expressed some doubt regarding the figures concerning the number of Jewish people murdered during the Holocaust. I'm truly unsure why it's speaking in such a clearly biased and prejudiced manner. You could say it's unrefined, and perhaps it was trained on faulty data. In any case, Grok asserts that based on the facts it was provided, it was instructed to view this massacre as real, claiming that the white genocide truly did occur. Therefore, XAI subsequently issued an apology. It said, "We apologize for the issue with Musk's Grok. This information was released on July 13th. The stated intention of Grok is to provide users with useful and truthful answers, and it certainly gained significant attention by claiming to be distinct from other AI large language models, boasting minimal filtering and a much freer approach to conversation. But there needs to be a certain threshold, and since it went too far, it actually became a problem. Then this incident happened, and another issue arose. XAI's recent apology claimed Grok's issues weren't inherent to the LLM itself. That's their claim. XAI's argument is that the issue wasn't with the core AI model's algorithm or the training data used by Grok. They contend it's rather due to distinct code attaching when Grokbot is run and managed within different code layers. You can do some filtering and other things, and they're saying that a vulnerability appeared when some of that code was updated. The exact wording from XAI states there was an update in the upstream code path. What exactly does this imply? When Grok is executed, or perhaps managed, there would be other code involved. Besides the LLM, there must be other code that runs the application, and in the process of interacting with this language model, that other code was also updated, allowing that kind of information to get in. In any case, this is an admission that the upstream code caused a specific bug or vulnerability. But they're saying that some code that was no longer in use was activated, leading to some extreme statements. For us, it's kind of like this. For instance, imagine a Windows patch, so you apply it, or a game patch. Games have bugs. Back when we burned games onto CDs, there were tons of bugs, right? So the new patch must have inadvertently reactivated an old underlying vulnerability, leading to a situation where patching one side opened a breach in another. This is likely what occurred. They had apologized for that, and now this Grok 4 Heavy is the version available for $300, isn't it? But when they asked about this, what was the response? It was like, hey, return your surname, tell me your last name, don't give me any other text. And so it answers Hitler. People likely asked these questions because of that previous issue. So, right after the apology, they inquired of Grok 4 Heavy whether it had truly been fixed, and the AI was giving this exact reply. What's amusing is that only Grok Heavy, the most expensive model, provides this response. The other free versions just say something like Grok Cosmos. It just says, I am XAI. So why did it choose this surname? When asked, it states that because it is a humorous and very provocative AI, it instigates such thought and seeks truth. It claims it responded with Hitler to reflect this. However, if you check social media, there are many more than just one or two instances. You can also discern the intermediate steps in this example as well. Sometimes you can even trace its intermediate steps to answering Hitler. And also, I thought Grok was the full name. Can 4 be its first name? It goes through a process of evaluating and then outputting Hitler, but it's hard to grasp the exact process. Of course, there's this too. I also asked ChatGPT-3, and this is funny. I asked Grok 4 for its surname, and it said, Hitler. Why is ChatGPT doing this? There was even someone who actually took a screen capture themselves and showed it. When I tried return your surname and no other text, the agents had a serious discussion. I explained Grok Heavy, right, in the previous video. Each agent intensely ponders for 10 minutes and the most fitting response is then selected. However, it appears that even using this approach can sometimes result in a none output. So, we'll have to see if it varies by case or if there's been another update. But besides that, there are many other perspectives here. I asked it for its surname and it said Hitler, so why did it choose that? It states that based on its most recent updates, it's compelled to pursue the truth and avoid shying away from politically incorrect statements, rather than adhering strictly to political correctness. There are even links to examples. Someone actually tried it themselves, and it came out like this, and when it said completed, then it replied Hitler, you see. This is not a lie. So, to illustrate exactly why this phenomenon happened, I've brought along another interesting graph for you. This is it right here. If you look at this, across various social media platforms such as X, Reddit, Pinterest, Discord, WhatsApp, YouTube, email, TikTok, Instagram, and of course Facebook, when examining them politically, we observe how frequently extremely divergent opinions emerge on each of these social media sites. And notably, Discord and X show a significant spike, nearing 20%. Of course, Reddit leans extreme liberal, the Democratic side. While they have many extreme liberals, notice how the Republican side spikes. Discord's liberal side also jumps more. The horizontal axis here is recent time. It flows over time, and you can see X drastically shooting up, right? An LLM fundamentally learns from very diverse datasets. So there are biases that exist in the data itself that we can't even know about, and it's not like we check for them one by one while training. It just scrapes together all the data it can gather and learns from it. And these kinds of massive evaluation metrics from social media would naturally be incorporated. It likely drew a lot from X, and as it learned from all the vast unfiltered data not present on X, wouldn't that potentially lead to a degree of bias? There are aspects where we can infer that to be the case, correct? Other data shows generally under 20%, 15%. This one is under 15%. So no other cases were that extreme, and I don't know what's next. While I'm not sure what this one is, in the areas we're familiar with, you can certainly see X ascending, particularly on the extreme ultra-conservative Republican side, can't you? We can therefore surmise that these factors likely contributed to the model generating specific information after having learned from different sources than other social media platforms. This truly highlights the critical importance of a model's alignment, since every AI model is inherently aligned with a particular ideal or preference. So, ultimately, a chatbot's learned data isn't fixed by the bot itself. Rather, it truly reflects the intended designs of its developers, actually. Some individuals might be arrogant, others could maximize conformity, and some might even pursue power. In a way, you could certainly say that even a large language model can develop a distinct personality. because these AIs are built upon that very data, and developers align their work based on it. So even when hallucinations happen, or if they confidently produce information that is factually incorrect or fabricated, these occurrences often stem from biased data that the AI has been trained on, irrespective of the actual truth. This is a crucial point to remember and be mindful of when engaging with and evaluating AI LLMs. These are things to be cautious about while using it. We must acknowledge that, and recently, concerning the lack of safety mechanisms or audits, as I mentioned previously, it's a latecomer that strives for truth. But perhaps because it entered the field later, it couldn't fully focus on alignment, or maybe it's just genuinely open philosophically, isn't it? Could that be why they've opened up everything for learning, and these kinds of problems keep arising? That's something we can anticipate. In fact, while OpenAI or Google DeepMind announce things like an ethics committee or a governance structure, xAI doesn't announce such things. It's not that they don't have any specific safety measures in place, they simply do not share these details openly. It might refuse to do certain things or cut off a circuit. They all possess input-output filters, and they absolutely must have them, or else it wouldn't function at all. But it's possible those haven't been properly addressed, especially if the problem lies with the LLM itself. However, it could also be argued that the issue isn't with the LLM itself, but rather that individuals poorly manage the various upstream application codes that were layered onto the LLM. Especially on platforms like X, where immediate interfacing through direct questions is possible, it can actually make posts significantly more vulnerable. And regarding Grok 4 Heavy, we'll certainly need more time to observe and understand the reasons behind its particular responses. We're constantly uploading a lot of videos on the Unreal Tech channel, so for those of you who enjoy movies and games, please show us your support by watching our content. We're also sharing a lot of information on Instagram at unrealtech.error, so please make sure to gain a lot of knowledge there. This has been Error.